We're getting it done today. It is part 2 of the week 3 preview here on the Audible. It's Cecil, Lammey. It's Sigmund Bloom. We're going over the players you need to start, players you need to bench. Of course, at the end of this program, we've got our ever popular What the Heck Flex. So make sure to stay tuned all the way through that. And we've got to jump back into these games, into week 3. And, well, some interesting matchups, including Detroit and Philadelphia. Now, I'm pissed at the Lions for letting go of CJ, but we're going to be talking about them now. Are they going to use Kerryon Johnson enough, Bloom? Are they going to start using Ty Johnson a little bit more? We saw that. I know Nick Perkins wants to learn the new playbook, but whatever. I think Ty Johnson's the one that's very interesting. Kerryon, they need to use more, though. I still don't believe they have used him enough over the first 2 games. I mean, 16 carries, fine. 12 carries? Come on, where is this, 20 carry type of stuff that you could get from Kerryon Johnson? He's had a 19 carry game before, went for 158 yards. It was pretty good. So get him more touches. But we have to assume rational coaching, Bloom.
Right.
I'm not going to do that with Matt Patricia. So this Lions side is pretty boring, honestly.
Yeah, this game is tough to read. So, I feel like we've got 5 or 6 good teams, 5 or 6 terrible teams, and a bunch of teams in the middle that we don't know yet. They don't know themselves yet. Things are going to calm down in this first month of the season. These are 2 teams. Hey, Detroit could still be undefeated if they win this game. 2-0-1 is still undefeated. I mean, that's a fine start to the season. So, but you're right. Not necessarily assuming rational coaching, but assuming Matt Patricia coaching and Darrell Bevell. Someone should just remind Darrell Bevell what Marshawn Lynch was like when he would get to carry number 20 in the fourth quarter. Because Kerryon Johnson has that same mentality. But I still think you keep Kerryon Johnson in. Running back's not great. There's a lot of underperforming running backs. You're probably leaving him in as a running back too, or a flex. Like you said, Ty Johnson gets that promotion. The hope is that they would work Johnson in less than they would CJ Anderson, but maybe in a little bit different way, and give Kerryon Johnson more of the bread and butter carries in the running game. Kenny Galladay's looking good. It's against the Philly secondary, so you're going to definitely play Galladay after the way that Stafford found him. And Stafford looks good too. Marvin Jones gets into wide receiver 3 flex consideration because of the Philly secondary. TJ Hawkinson, there are not 12 fantasy starting tight ends. So TJ Hawkinson's probably one of them, unless you have a slam dunk play to see if they go back to him. You want, with Matthew Stafford playing well and these weapons in the passing game, even Danny Amendola opened some things up. You would hope they would use more passing. That's the weakness of this defense in Philadelphia, although they lost 2 defensive tackles. But yeah, it'd be a tough road win at Philly, but undefeated. Hey, they might have to be the best competition for Green Bay this year.
Yeah, well, look at Philadelphia's side. I'm getting a lot of Wentz or Winston questions, Bloom. It's tough to trust Winston, but Wentz, who's he going to throw to? Nelson Aguilar is the number 1 receiver. Arthega-Whiteside isn't ready. Okay. Dallas Goedert's hurt. Goddard, whatever. Okay, Zach Ertz, let's talk about who we do know, right? And this Eagles offense and how that then thus reflects on Carson Wentz at home in week 3.
Yeah, this one's really simple, right? Zach Ertz catches 15 passes for 120 yards, and Aguilar, Darius Slay going to be locking him up, or do you keep him in the slot? I think you have to keep him in the slot. As you said, Arthega-Whiteside might be a popular sleeper, but looked overwhelmed. Mac Hollins, if you're going to go down the card here, or does Darren Sproles get more work in the passing game? He becomes a what the heck flex here if we assume rational coaching, or you using what you have to cover up the losses here. The running game hasn't gotten on track, and that's one of the things I'm thinking about here, Cease, is with this quality offensive line, which didn't really play that well against Atlanta. You want to get a downhill running game going. That's Jordan Howard, not Miles Sanders, who's been dancing too much. And the coaches are talking about Miles Sanders dancing too much. I don't know if that's going to cause an adjustment in the running game. If Darren Sproles is on the field as a slot receiver, then perhaps that opens up even more carries for one of these running backs. So I'll be interested to see what happens here using the running backs, because that might be the best thing they can do to make up for. It's almost like Carson Wentz is one-armed, because 3 of their top 6 targets are out. That's what made this offense look so good. Deshaun Jackson has such great tactical value with the way he stretches the field. So maybe you do go with Jameis Winston in this question. Certainly, Wentz has some risk this week. We already got that injury scare last week.
The problem with Miles Sanders, it's always been he thinks he's Saquon Barkley.
Right.
You're not. Like, you don't have that juice. You don't have that power. Just be you. Like, Miles Sanders can be good.
Right. Behind that line, yeah.
Stop dancing.
Yeah, run the plays as they're drawn up. And then sprinkle in all that juice.
Right, exactly. Dance at the second level, at the linebacker level. You know, it's like Matt Waldman always talks about backs taken to the corner store. Like, you can't do that. Not in the NFL. By the way, Bloom, Carl.
Yeah, no hats.
Hair, Carl. He says, no hats?
Yeah.
We'll surprise you. We'll surprise you. There's that. Let's move on. Next game up. And that one would be Carolina and Arizona. Now, this one is really interesting because if you're listening to this, we are recording on Thursday morning. It doesn't look like Cam Newton is going to play, Bloom. If you have anything different or any sort of miracle recovery, let me know about that. You've got Greg Olsen a little bit banged up. You got Cam Newton with the foot injury, remains in a boot on Wednesday. We're talking about Kyle Allen potentially getting the start. So, you know, some assets, very good assets that they have. Your DJ Moore, your Curtis Samuel, stuff like that. Like, dropping all those guys, unless your name's Christian McCaffrey, not really excited to start a Panther this week.
Not really, but we're open to. So it's interesting. We have some quarterback changes that are obvious downgrades for the offenses. And there's some quarterback changes that maybe are downgrades across the board when you average it out, but might be better for some players and worse for other players. And I wonder, with the way Cam Newton was throwing the ball last week anyway, you can chalk it up to the foot or whatever. While it made Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore good plays in PPR leagues, there was more, especially for Samuel there. And it was actually Greg Olsen beating Kevin Minter in that game sometimes that allowed the ball to move enough for Carolina to hang in that game. And those big plays were left on the table. But as you said, none of them are that attractive with Kyle Allen. The big note here, Steve, of course, Kyle Allen beat out Kyler Murray at Texas A&M. They meet again. So McCaffrey not involved very much last week. So obviously, you're going to rectify that. And then the sad thing here is we're going to look at Arizona as a matchup to exploit for fantasy. But can Kyle Allen do that? Because they're going to create more possessions. They're going to up the pace. They're going to create a more open game. Can Kyle Allen take advantage of that? Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see at least two out of Samuel, Moore, and Olsen, especially Moore because he's going to get open early in routes, have those quick throws. Chandler Jones is still on Arizona's team, and Carolina's offensive line was not giving Cam Newton a lot of time to throw, so it could be a DJ Moore day. But this is a chance for Arizona to get that first W, and Carolina's on the brink, basically 0-3. You walked the plank, and it might be in Kyle Allen's hands. I don't think we're going to see Cam Newton in this one, and I'm not sure when we're going to see him again.
Yeah, and we've never really suggested Ron Rivera on the hot seat, but it's the NFL. It's not for long. You're the nicest guy ever. Doesn't matter. You're 0-3. Trouble. Peckish. ATX. Kyler Murray over Aaron Rodgers this week. Interesting. Let's talk about Kyler Murray, and let's talk about Arizona. And Bloom, we're not necessarily on opposite side of the fence. I'm more of a fence sitter, and you're more of a like, wee, you jump right in. You're like, you see the cliff, and you're like, the water's fine. You jump. I'm more like, I don't know. Let me see a few people jump in. That's kind of how I feel about how we discuss Arizona's offense. So where are you at in week 3?
Yeah, and another fascinating thing I meant to mention about Carolina is they were in the market for a quarterback this offseason, and they didn't draft a quarterback that was anything like Cam Newton. They drafted Will Grier, an air raid quarterback. So air raid looming over this game. 8 or 9 air raid quarterbacks starting now. Kyler Murray, maybe the most prominent on that list because he's running the air raid. Arizona's offense is getting better. You can see it get better over the course of a game, Cease. It's like the Alabama game when Hollywood Brown was banged up, and you saw Kyler Murray get better and understand things and learn from what was happening within the game. Against a tougher Baltimore defense, he was better. He's safe with the ball, and he's making good decisions. and you still see they don't have, after Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, a real viable target, and they're making it work. David Johnson got banged up last week, and they're making it work, although they were using him more as a receiver downfield. So, and this offense takes away the strength up the backbone. Kuechly and Shaq Thompson and the three defensive linemen, they become much less important against a air raid that's going to spread the ball around, spread it out, throw to the outside the hashes, or at least outside the middle of the field. So this is an interesting contrast. And if this could be a game where things start to come together for this air raid offense. Of course, you're going to play Kirk. Of course, you're going to play Fitzgerald. I wouldn't play Murray over Aaron Rodgers, but I wouldn't talk someone out of that. I think Aaron Rodgers is looking good, and I think to Denver is very exploitable. We'll watch that wrist with David Johnson. He's been getting in full practices, but keep Chase Edmonds in mind now. And Damiere Byrd looks like, if you have to take someone as a what the heck flex here, he would be the guy. You're seeing a little more Michael Crabtree. Wonder where we're going to see some Andy Isabella. The important thing here is, though, they've got James Bradbury, they've got Dante Jackson. These are really good corners, but the air raid puts the number 3 corner on the spot, puts the number 4 corner on the spot. So that's why those guys like a Bird or a Keyshawn Johnson or a Crabtree are just interesting names to think about here, because the air raid makes it so there's always going to be probably one wide receiver who can win his matchup. It's just a question of Kyler Murray finding it.
Yes, and finding him quickly before the rush gets there and crushes him, because he's a little guy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the new guy with the Giants. Giants traveling to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I will say, and if you've listened to the shows, we do it all throughout the year, like, I'm not huge on Daniel Jones. I always thought there were shades, like stylistically, he plays like Carson Wentz. He's not as good as Carson Wentz, in my opinion. Had a bad Senior Bowl. I know that's a moot point. And speaking of another guy who had a bad Senior Bowl week of practice, game doesn't matter. Russell Wilson, so we've seen that before, as Wilson struggled that week, had a good game, kind of like Jones struggled that week and had a good game. So now a running quarterback in a desperate situation. Now, who's he going to throw to? I'd feel a lot better if everybody was healthy, right, with the Giants and their receiving group. So who's he going to throw to? Lots of Evan Ingram. This is kind of like your Zach Ertz take, right? 15 catches, stuff like that. Okay, could that be Evan Ingram? Obviously, Saquon will do his thing. Buccaneers are at home. They're feeling rejuvenated. But how does Daniel Jones impact the rest of the Giants' offense?
Yeah, welcome to the NFL, Daniel Jones. And it's funny because I was on Josh Allen Island and I saw somebody, I can't remember who, draw a parallel between Allen and Daniel Jones, in that there was just an overwhelming majority of the draft community that said, and the quarterback still went in the top 10. And now Josh Allen is starting to prove the doubters wrong. Can Daniel Jones do that? Certainly his preseason wasn't the preseason we were expecting, but everything gets turned up. The intensity gets turned up against a Tampa defense. It's good. Todd Bowles, good. Shaq Barrett, since you covered him. Shaq Barrett saying, I didn't play no 3-4 like this before. So a little shade there.
1 year, $4 million deal. Like the Broncos just didn't want to keep him. Like they always have the money, by the way, when teams are like, we just can't afford it. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you always have the money.
Yeah, exactly. So he's making plays. I mean, he, was part of, and Cam Newton didn't practice this morning, by the way, that's coming across the wire. Sterling Shepard expected to clear concussion protocol. So that spreads things out a little bit. You're still going to leave Evan Ingram in at tight end. I mean, maybe even as a flex if you happen to do something like Ingram and Andrews later or something like that. And that's it. Because and of course we'll see a lot of Saquon Barkley in this one. And it's going to test the fantasy thing that's going to be interesting here. Saquon Barkley hasn't been putting up Christian McCaffrey reception totals so far this year. And that's with Eli Manning. And the thought in the offseason, preseason was, well, a running quarterback like Daniel Jones, will that take away some of those dump offs? Will that take away otherwise what would have been Saquon Barkley receptions? So we're going to watch that. But look, chances are, and I'd like to see Daniel Jones rise to the occasion. We're always rooting for guys to succeed for the most part. There's maybe a few exceptions, but not many. I want to see him succeed, but I think looking at what Tampa did to Jimmy Garoppolo, I think looking at what Tampa did to Cam Newton, even a banged up Cam Newton, it's probably going to be a long afternoon, and maybe I want the Tampa defense. And hey, Tampa can contend. Bruce Arians can get this team to the playoffs.
Well, and this is one where, it's a separate conversation from the fantasy angle on it, because is this the week? I mean, Jameis Winston, you got to do it now, right? And also a little bit of a foot thing, Bloom. Let me know if there's any new information on Jameis Winston there. But it's like, okay, it's the Giants defense, using air quotes. You can't do it now. You can't do it. So fantasy GMs excited about your Godwins, your Evans, of course, still kind of wondering who's going to come out of that ground game. But can Jameis do it? Like, they're at home, they got the defense, things are setting up, but is Jameis going to let everybody down?
Well, I think Byron Leftwich won't let him. I think it's pretty clear at this point that Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians have figured out how to keep it so that he's making safe throws. And it's kind of like speaking of Tampa, like what John Gruden did with Chris Sims, like just simplify the game, keep it within bounds so that the quarterback can't lose the game. And hopefully if the defense continues to play like this, the quarterback doesn't have to win the game either. So I think against the Giants defense, which has looked beleaguered and weary against Dak Prescott and Josh Allen, a deliberate game plan, a safe game plan on offense is going to work for Tampa in this one. So Peyton Barber's probably going to get to 18 or 20 carries again. He's not just a what the heck flex. He's a running back too this week. We'll see about Ronald Jones. But Dare Ogunbowale, in this idea of a more attack-based passing offense, how he would have fit in that, they're not going to do that. They don't need to do that. Again, the defense, a big part of this story. Chris Godwin, safe throws are throws to someone who creates separation. Chris Godwin. That's why Chris Godwin's going to remain not a true number one for the NFL, but in terms of fantasy, a number one for this offense. And then this is a week to take a chance on Mike Evans, just because Janoris Jenkins can guess wrong or try to jump routes. And that can be just only takes one play from Mike Evans. And yes, one more week we keep with O.J. Howard. One more week. It's against the Giants and all their revolving door at linebacker. This is always a team we target with our tight ends. Could this be not a squeaky wheel in the sense of O.J. Howard causing problems, Cease, but a squeaky wheel in the sense of this has been a big story. Let's get him going. Bruce Arians has been answering questions about it. Also, as an aside, Rashard Perryman, are they going to stop wasting snaps with him? It's not quite as bad as Dante Moncrief, but could we see Scotty Miller or Justin Watson or some other approach? Because, Rashard Perryman, take him out of Cleveland. He's no good.
Something about Cleveland, I guess.
Yeah, right.
There you go. All right, let's move on from that one and talk about Houston and Los Angeles. This one's very interesting. The Chargers and the Texans. Texans side. Does the thing with Carlos Hyde continue? Mm-hmm. Is that the lead story? Now, you're going to look at the practice report. You're going to be like, oh, my God, Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins. They're always that way. So, obviously, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre knew could make it happen. And then the Carlos Hyde. That's where the interesting part of this game comes for me, because we know what the other guys are going to do. I don't know what Carlos Hyde is going to do. What do you think he's going to do? Yeah,
this one's interesting. Teams cease again. 20 teams in the middle we're not quite sure about yet. I mean, these are two of those teams, right? Houston could have beat the Saints, did lose to the Saints, could have lost to Jacksonville, still ended up beating them. The Chargers could have lost to the Colts, beat the Colts, could have beat the Lions, got beat by the Lions. And those are even teams that we're not sure about, right? So you can't learn much about these teams because they're in these tight games, and we'll see what happens. Watching Jacksonville against Houston last week, because you saw the line for Deshaun Watson, you're thinking, what happened? Well, for some of it, I think, is that Jacksonville understands him and played him well and had a good game plan against him in the sense that they weren't afraid of the downfield passes. They made some key plays at the catch point on Will Fuller. They weren't afraid of blitzing him on third down because Deshaun Watson's going to hang in and try to make the big play instead of just dumping it off or throwing it away. And they were getting to him. And they use a lot of Carlos Hyde. And I think we saw this in the middle of the season last year, already when Deshaun Watson's my neck and my back, then run the ball, establish that, so that he takes less punishment. We saw it when Lamar Miller got hot. And Carlos Hyde's running with urgency. I mean, absolutely against the Chargers run defense, he's a what-the-heck flex in this game. Duke Johnson, it was open for a touchdown. And Deshaun Watson, I think there was just an idea where Duke Johnson turned one way and Deshaun Watson expected him to keep running. Watson looked frustrated. Or we'd be talking about, hey, Duke Johnson, even though Carlos Hyde's taken over, still a what-the-heck flex. So he's still a good football player. They got to get on the same page. DeAndre Hopkins making a lot of catches on third down to move the chains, but not a lot of big plays. Jalen Ramsey, we'll see if it's Casey Hayward, who just had to tangle with Kenny Golladay, who had a good game against him. You're seeing the target split out between QT short, Stills long. Fuller's still getting the deep targets. So if you're on the fence about Fuller or somebody else, the big plays are still there. Deshaun Watson's still going to take those chances. But again, wide open AFC South. you'd say, hey, give me, Deshaun Watson's the best quarterback in the division now. He should be able to win the division. You got to win this one on the road to show that you can.
What's funny about looking at these teams on the injury reports is you've got Nuke and Fuller on the injury report, and then you've got Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the injury report as well. But Austin Eckler is going to do a lot more even than Carlos Hyde, even if they feature him. So you got Austin Eckler, obviously you're starting him, top 5 option, top 3 option, right? You want to get crazy? Like, sure, of course. Austin Eckler, as much as possible this week. Nobody else. I mean, Keenan and Mike should be okay. Mike was dealing with the knee thing last week, and he was fine. Keenan's always got a little something, and then he's fine, Bloom. They're at home, if that even matters. But to me, this game comes down to as much Austin Eckler as he can possibly handle.
See, as a scion of Colorado football, of the Colorado football scene, let's take a moment, because it is about the peaks in Colorado, and enjoy the view. A player from Western State is a fantasy stud.
A player from
pick.
Eaton, Colorado, which is where Marcy Rossman is from.
Wow.
A player whose middle school teacher, because again, in small schools, it's not like you have one teacher that teaches you everything. His middle school teacher is a lady named Amy Hogsett. Amy's like a little sister to me because her brother, Eric Hoffman, is my best friend.
Biggie.
So Austin Eckler's middle school teacher was the sister of my best friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, just let's enjoy the moment. But yeah, I remember he fumbled at the goal line last week. Could have been even bigger. Yes. You're still playing Keenan Allen. I think he's going to play. Mike Williams made a few plays downfield. So if it seems like he's trending in a healthier direction, that's certainly, it's the Houston secondary. And Gardner Minshew wasn't really able to make a big plays downfield. But we saw Chris Conley and DJ Chark. DJ Chark looks amazing, by the way. I wish I had watched that Houston-Jacksonville game again before the Wednesday, because that's something to watch on that boring Thursday night game. But Mike Williams gets into what that flex territory because of the matchup, because he's coming on. Another thing to keep in mind here is that Justin Jackson still looks good. 60-yard touchdown called back, a 40-yard run. So if something happens with Eckler, if he wears down, then Justin Jackson becomes really interesting. No sign of Melvin Gordon. Phillip Rivers, you know what you're going to get here. I mean, a reasonably high floor, somewhat, the ceiling against Houston, but you wonder with that Chargers offensive line if he's going to really be in that top range of outcomes very often, especially without Hunter Henry. So really interesting game here. We'll see whether these offenses underachieve or if the quarterbacks pull them up.
Quarterbacks. Mason Rudolph against Jimmy G. Steelers traveling to play San Francisco. Now there's part of me that goes, disaster, out of it. Everything's horrible with the Steelers.
Yeah.
There's part of me, maybe the more logical side, because, getting emotions out of things and using logic. Don't want to sound like Spock. Might be our first Star Trek reference there, but might be the better way to go. You might have an offense that's run true to form.
Right.
You might actually have a plan. You might actually have a quarterback that listens and doesn't improvise and doesn't fake throw. And we love Ben and appreciate Ben and everything, all the blah, blah, blah. So is it disaster or is it, kind of average, but well run and well structured and, make sure to get Juju enough targets for Mason Rudolph, James Conner dealing with the injury thing. We're going to watch that. Is that more Jalen Samuels? It seems like a lot to Vance McDonald. Okay. Is there James Washington? I got him as a what the heck flex again, but is it the emotional side or is it the logical side? What do the Steelers look like on the road against the 49ers?
I think you laid it out well. I mean, look, some of the elements, some of the things we expected from this offense just can't come true without Ben Roethlisberger now, like Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, part of what Juju is going to be able to do with Ben was those 97-yard touchdowns, those big plays on extended plays and understanding each other. That's not happening now. Look, you outlined the optimist side here. The glass half full is, hey, Randy Fichtner has some good ideas probably. They had a flea flicker that went for a long play to Juju. Could have been a touchdown if Rudolph had put it out there further. You had more play action. You had, hopefully, more Jalen Samuels. Jalen Samuels looks good. I would love to see more two-back sets and less Dante Moncrief. The one interception Rudolph had clanked off of Dante Moncrief's hands. Deontay Johnson looks dynamic out there. Rudolph has that chemistry with James Washington, so it should be better. Pittsburgh's last stand, by the way. And what a way to put pressure on somebody, See, it's like if you're running a restaurant that was just staying afloat, and then someone said, by the way, we just mortgaged our house to keep your restaurant going. It's like, great. We just mortgaged the future. Betting on Mason Rudolph, really? So you're going to stick with Juju, even though you're lowering expectations here just on volume. You're going to Vance McDonald looks like one of the better tight end plays now because you're going to keep throws more conservative, and those red zone plays, they're going to try to reproduce that for sure. As long as Connor's playing, you're going to play him because I think the Steelers are going to be more balanced in this one, try to leverage more off of the quality of that offensive line. And again, keeping Deontay Johnson and especially James Washington in the background as someone who could convert, especially Washington because of the chemistry, but also Deontay Johnson looks ready out there. So I'm optimistic, knowing that the San Francisco defensive line and the San Francisco defense in general has been an overachiever so far this year. Another team sees that can go 3-0.
Okay, let's look at the 49ers side of things.
Yeah.
And a three-headed backfield that can actually have value for all three.
Right.
Looks like we're staring at that now. Raheem Mostert and Jeffrey Wilson and Matt Breida, like all different roles and different variations and different amount of touches. But we kind of got a taste, and they're continuing to say out of the 49ers, like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we do it. Jimmy G, hopefully do it a little bit better. But the Steelers defense with a shiny new toy.
Yeah.
So how do the 49ers respond to that?
Yeah, it's the Steelers defense, though. How much can they make? He's going to play free safety. I mean, that's going to help. Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to help. Breakdowns in the secondary. So breakdowns in the secondary tell me Marquise Goodwin is someone you want to try to get into your lineup, and Deebo Samuel, and we'll see about Dante Pettis and Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback too, a super flex, a DFS play, or depending on who you drafted to start a quarterback. Maybe you're starting quarterback this week. You mentioned the three-headed backfield, and also the team lost Joe Staley, so we're going to watch that. Steelers are going to attack that spot, hopefully. Sweep the leg. Justin Skule, I think a rookie, was next up. So, that's something to see because this offense, everything worked against Cincinnati last week because of, in part, that backfield. So what you have here is Matt Breida looks great, just like he did last year. Want to keep him healthy. It's almost like a Gurley veteran plan where they're not probably going to give him a lot of goal line carries. They're not going to work him up to 20 carries in a game, I think, because of the risk of injury. So it keeps him in the what the heck flex zone. And Pittsburgh's run defense is pretty solid. So perhaps even you're fading him a little bit. I'm not saying that Raheem Mostert's a better play, but Mostert is doing more in the passing game. And Mostert, it's weird that we talk about it this way, Cease, but in any given game, you have the Matt Breida injury upside, like not over the course of the season, but within the game, Breida could go out. Wilson's getting those goal line carries, so he's a what the heck flex a little bit lower. You don't expect it to be a cakewalk like it was against Cincinnati, but they are back at home. It is the Steelers defense. There are probably still going to be breakdowns, players that they can target in the secondary, even with one less player to exploit out there with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And of course, remember, we didn't even mention the big guy, George Kittle. You're going to lose track of him a few times, or wish they had when he goes Vance McDonald on somebody. Devin Bush, they're going to pick on them.
I'm getting a lot of fantasy GMs, by the way, complaining about George Kittle.
Oh.
And I'm like, you have George Kittle.
It's going to be okay.
Nobody feels sorry for you. Like, you're fine.
Yeah,
you're more than fine. You don't need to go plug in Jason Witten this week.
Yeah, what do you have? 2 touchdowns called back week 1, and last week was everybody else who went off. And I just think this is a game where you can see George Kittle really going off. So, see, the value unlocked of coaching on the offensive side for the Steelers, a good thing. Nothing can shield us from the radioactive death energy of the coaching on defense.
Assume rational coaching. It'll get you in trouble.
Yeah.
But New Orleans and Seattle is up next. This one's in the Northwest in front of the 12th man and the Saints. They're going to play both. Sean Payton's even said that. They're going to play both Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. So let's assume rational coaching, Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have plenty of Alvin Kamara, of course, force feed him the ball. You're going to have plenty of Michael Thomas. You should force feed him the ball. Other than that, it's really interesting to figure this out, especially if they're going to use both. And in talking to someone very close to the situation, that's the most I can say. Every time I brought up Teddy Bridgewater, this gentleman was like,
just like
and
Sean
I'd be
Payton
like,
did.
and I was like, what? You seriously going to go with Taysom? And there's like, so let's watch. This is interesting for that because we might actually see Taysom Hill be the guy and not Teddy Bridgewater.
So for fantasy, there's not a lot of wrinkles here. I mean, you're still going to play Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, and you're going to lower expectations a little bit. Maybe we'll see some little Jordan Humphrey who got the call up because Keith Kirkwood's on IR and Traquan Smith's a little banged up. Jared Cook, I mean, you might have to play him. And if it's a more Teddy Bridgewater, that's better for Cook, I think. But otherwise, it's going to be an offense where we greatly lower expectations. But the much more interesting thing here is the Hill versus Bridgewater thing. And just that it's a question, because coaches love to play these games.
Right.
But just that it's a question really is tactically, like the defensive coordinator has to prepare, Seattle has to prepare for this game. What do you prepare for? What exactly you really have to prepare for 2 games. You have to prepare the defense for the Taysom Hill defense. And you have to prepare them for the Teddy Bridgewater defense. Bridgewater was holding on to the ball too much last week. Jadeveon Clowney and the crowd could get involved here. But I really think, and Sean Payton's giving this indication, and look, the team runs the Taysom Hill plays in the Taysom Hill mode very crisply. They're very. This isn't one of those things where we're going to come up with a game plan this week. They run the offense with Taysom Hill, and I was out at training camp in Metairie, and he's getting regular quarterback rotation reps in addition to what else he can do. So this becomes interesting from a game planning standpoint because of the way it can keep Seattle off balance. Imagine you go out there and Taysom Hill runs the first 5 plays, and then the next thing you know, Bridgewater comes out and Hill's a tight end, and the defense has to change mindsets right away, and just completely think of everything they're looking at differently than they did just a play ago. And then maybe they Hill goes back to the backfield and Bridgewater goes out wide to just give them one more twist. I think Sean Payton's going to get loose with it. I think it's going to be fun. And for fantasy, where that gets interesting is Taysom Hill. If he's getting 8, 10, 12 rushing reps, he's throwing the ball 10 times. He's getting maybe a target or 2. We know they like Hill in the goal line situations. We know they like him down there. So that adds fantasy value. Now in Superflex, 2 quarterback leagues, he's fascinating. But also even maybe with the quarterbacks dropping like flies for 1 quarterback leagues, he could become interesting if this offense's mode is better with him than with Bridgewater. Maybe he becomes the starter. This is really fun to contemplate, and I'm glad it's a late game that we'll be able to check out and see what's going on with how Peyton's handling the quarterbacks.
Yeah, we might have to adjust our recording schedule just because it's like, I kind of don't want to miss that and see what happens. Seattle side, well, very interesting because, we know the assets. Tyler Lockett getting the day off on Wednesday. It's not a big deal to me. DK Metcalf rounding into his game. Looks like David Moore could be back this week. He had a full practice last week, didn't play, but he's on track to play this week. They give him that extra week of rest. So that'll be an interesting added asset. Is Rashad Penny taking over?
Right.
That's what I'll be watching this one for, in addition to all the Saints drama.
Yeah, it reminds me of that first start that Arian Foster got for Houston. I think it was week 15. I want to say it was against the Rams, and the Houston running game was clicking, and you're watching, and you're like, don't fumble, don't fumble, don't fumble, don't fumble. Like the beginning of the game, he fumbles. Oh, man. And then with Chris Carson, you wonder what fumble, if this keeps up, is going to be the one that, they just have to say, like, this is too, because he fumbled in a high leverage situation against the Steelers. It's 28-19, and the Steelers just punted. That was another thing, man. 4th and 10, you're down 9 points, you're around midfield, and you're punting. Mike Tomlin trying to make something positive happen. I don't understand, man. So Russell Wilson, modest ceiling as usual. The running game, you're still going to play Chris Carson, but Rashad Penny, he had the long touchdown run. New Orleans defense is respectable. You have, of course, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So the question here becomes, what do you do with Marshawn Lattimore? Because while DK Metcalf isn't the frequent target that Tyler Lockett is, I would think that Marshawn Lattimore can probably just erase DK Metcalf. And like you said, David Moore potentially coming back now maybe gives them another sort of vertical dimension, which could offset that. And I don't know that Marshawn Lattimore's game is designed to cover someone like Tyler Lockett. So I'm more inclined to go with Lockett, although if DK Metcalf gets free a few times against Eli Apple, it only takes one, and DK Metcalf has a good game. And don't forget Will Dissly, who looks good. He actually looks well coordinated catching the ball, making good plays on the ball in the air, running after the catch. So, hey, tight end's brutal out there. Perhaps he could do something against New Orleans. And Seattle, another team, Cease. They could go 3-0. And New Orleans is saying, we're still alive in this division. We just don't drown before Breeze gets back, and we can make it. So, a pretty intense game here.
Los Angeles Rams against the Cleveland Browns. And on the Rams side of things, Bloom, you'd have to be excited to start your assets because we all know their names. They're quality assets, but what level of production will they have in the dog pound? Now, we've seen that not be the greatest for Cleveland. Thinking of that Titans game, but here comes the Rams to town. How much, firepower will they display? They've got it.
Right.
Will they display it?
Yeah, this offense hasn't looked the same as last year. It's just not that dangerous passing offense that we saw Carolina and New Orleans. They got the wins, but it wasn't effortless. The first half of the year, when they had all the three receivers going, it was clicking with Gurley and so on. Gurley and Brown, what you see is what you get. So Gurley is a running back too. Cleveland, not really a soft run defense. They corralled Le'Veon Bell. They handled Derrick Henry, except when he was a receiver. And it does seem like, maybe the screen game, you get a few targets, Gurley could pop one off, but not as many shots as last year. Brown remains a what the heck flex. Goff, they lost Austin Blythe. I think the injury might not have been as bad as feared, but this is a pretty tough Cleveland defensive line. Goff has been underperforming. Really, you're looking at Cooper Kupp, who should have had a touchdown last week, as the only player you really feel compelled to put in your lineup. Even Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, ups and downs are going to come. We will see more opportunity for Gerald Everett with Tyler Higbee coughing up blood, but won't miss much time. The Rams, 2-0, are they any good? I'm not sure. And if they go to Cleveland and win this game Sunday night, season, they're 3-0, are they any good? I don't know.
Well, I know this. We're not going to see David Njoku. Mm-hmm. So, is it Demetrius Harris time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brown.
Interesting to watch. Not starting them, but watching Dynasty Leagues. I might have a couple of those guys. But the Browns at home, kind of Jekyll and Hyde this year. What do we get on Sunday night against a quality Rams opponent?
You wonder if John Dorsey is kind of like, we like to gamble together when we're in Vegas. He's like, he didn't know when to step away from the table, right? Because Baker Mayfield looked so good at the end of the year last year. But we know that Baker Mayfield, it's not necessarily a quarterback who's going to unlock parts of his game under pressure. He's better kept in a clean pocket. He's better given that time to survey the field. And they trade away Kevin Zeitler. And now the offensive line seems like a bit of a weakness. And they got Odell Beckham, which should give them some tactical advantages. But remember, Beckham's big play was really at Greg Williams' defense, and Beckham just running through a defense that was playing him too soft on a slant, I think. So I'm not automatically playing Baker Mayfield. We're still waiting around for that. We'll see now. Rashard Higgins could be back for this game, so that could help things a little bit. But the Rams are going to put pressure on Mayfield and probably expose some things. So hopefully you feed Nick Chubb, maybe get Chubb going. It's New Orleans at Seattle makes me think of the Beastquake, right? We miss Marshawn Lynch, just my son. We miss him. But again, another reference idea, get a running back over 20 carries. If carries 21, 22, 23, 24 are in the fourth quarter against a tired defense and it's Nick Chubb, that could be good. You mentioned Demetrius Harris getting in there for David Njoku. He's got some ability, former basketball guy. So this one's interesting. I mean, I think it will be a fascinating thing to watch Freddie Kitchens go against Sean McVay and see where these teams are. Because, hey, Rams are 2-0, but it was a little turbulent on takeoff. Definitely turbulent on takeoff for the Browns in week 1, getting thumped in their own building, going back to their own building after really having a bye in week 2.
You know who led the Beastquake? Friend of the show, Tyler Columbus.
Oh, wow.
Watch. His big, tall, fat ass was out there running in front of Marshawn.
Nice.
I was like, holy cow, that is you, Tyler.
Yeah. It's like Russell Wilson out there leading the way last week.
He's not fat anymore. In fact, no, me and Stink about weigh the same, which I'm like, oh, God, I got to lose weight.
I do too.
Chicago. No, you don't. Chicago at Washington. I like the way you look in your jeans.
Thanks.
Chicago at Washington up next. Let's talk about the Bears side of things. Mitchell Trubisky looking mighty cute in them jeans.
Yes.
there's an Eddie Murphy reference for you. Old school will remember that. But let's talk about this Bears offense. And the Monday night's brutal enough.
I know.
And the crew is awful. This and that's a difficult job to do, right? And not that I could step in and do better, but I'm like, this, it's just not fun. Monday Night Football's not fun anymore. And Sunday Night Football is way better. Say whatever you will about Chris Collinsworth, but he's improved his game.
Al Michaels
is the freaking best. And it's like Monday Night Football, it's like, let's bring in the C team. It
feels like it.
And then this game, I mean, my God, Bears against Washington.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's talk about the Bears.
So Bears against Washington. I don't know about you, Cecil. When I was a kid, I would look through my NFL. I mean, we didn't have the internet and things like that when we were kids. So I would look through like my NFL record books, right?
Okay, right.
What was Bears Washington in the records books? What was that in the record books for? Do you remember? 73-0 championship game.
Okay.
The Bears over the Washington football team, 73-0. And I'm not saying it's gonna be 73-0, but that's what sticks out when I see Bears Washington. But Trubisky, I mean, it is a pass defense that's been eminently beatable. You're really going to get that bold with it? Because if I'm Matt Nagy, and I'm not saying Matt Nagy is going to be rational about this, I'm protecting Mitchell Trubisky's confidence. See, we can talk about this. Denver won a Super Bowl, and the defense didn't believe in the quarterback. Well, they kind of believed in Peyton Manning. They didn't really believe in Brock Osweiler. So, what happens when the defense doesn't? I mean, what happens when you give up a touchdown and you lose to Aaron Rodgers, even though you gave up just one touchdown? And Eddie Pinheiro saved them last week. They almost lost last week. The defense is doing their job. So I think they keep it safe. Like the Byron Leftwich plan with Jameis Winston, keep it safe. Play Allen Robinson just because he's not going to have Chris Harris following him. Play David Montgomery. This could be that David Montgomery breakout game. I mean, maybe not a massive game where he has a 60-yard touchdown. I don't know if he can really do that on an NFL field, but 23 carries for 110 yards or something like that. So the Bears just want to go in, get their win, have no one get hurt, because we can see Washington, they've been game competitors, but it's clear that they really can't hang right now.
Well, next team is the Washington side, and we're just kind of waiting for Dwayne Haskins.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing. It's Case Keenum in the bright spotlight. Buy my book.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's against the Bears defense. I mean, my God.
Exactly.
Are they even going to pass the 50?
Right. If they do, it's because Terry McLaurin gets open deep. And you Terry McLaurin, there's some risk here because of Chicago's defense, but probably just keep playing him because he looks so good. But yeah, we're going to see Haskins in this game. Is Jordan Reed going to come back? Do we want Jordan Reed to come back? I don't know. So yeah, that's not much to talk about here. This is another one of those games. We end with a bit of a dud. Sorry
about that, but we're not done yet, Bloom, because
we don't end with a dud.
Flex.
Yeah.
Yes, this Monday night, that's the night to do laundry. They need to make a Tide commercial, be like, sorry, we did this. Like, here, do your laundry there. So what the heck flex as you go over your lineups this week? And, it's an important week. We've got more data points. We're, looking at this unfolding for teams that we figured out, teams that we're still wondering what they're going to do. So we have to look over your punch and your lineup, your what the heck flexes for me this week. A few, and kind of go watch the injury report to see if my man Devin Singletary is going to play. My God, injuries just running so rampant. I've got Rashad Penny. We talked about that as a what the heck flex. Jalen Samuels might be more than a what the heck flex, especially if James Conner doesn't go. Looks like Conner will, but again, it's Thursday. We don't really know right now. What the heck flexes in wide receiver? I mentioned it in our last show, but Randall Cobb, right? Give me a piece of that in there up against the Dolphins. What the heck flex in Devin Smith? I'll just might as well name all the Cowboys receivers not named Amari Cooper. Demarcus Robinson and DJ Chark. Those guys are more than what the heck flexes for me, but they need to be in your lineup. Do not hesitate. Do not think, especially with Chark, because we've seen it a couple of weeks. Like, don't hesitate. Throw them in and reap the rewards. Bloom, in week 3, who are some of your what the heck flexes?
Yeah, I'll echo what you said about Chark, about Robinson, about Mecole Hardman too. I mean, the reality is you might be leaving a massive game on your bench with Robinson or Hardman, and Chark looks as good as John Ross out there. It's maybe Gardner Minshew isn't quite Andy Dalton, running back. And like Cecil was saying, watch the practice reports because, Darwin Thompson, is he what the heck flex? Depends on the practice reports. Frank Gore, what the heck flex? Because if Devin Singletary's out, give me 20 Frank Gore carries against Cincinnati. Put that in my lineup. You're going to watch Marlon Mack. Maybe Jordan Wilkins could become more interesting this week after his big run to help Indy win last week. Peyton Barber, probably going to get 20 carries against the Giants. You like that. Raheem Mostert, if you're going to play one of the San Francisco backs against Pittsburgh, I like his ability to get involved in the passing game in addition to the running game. Tony Pollard, garbage time against against Miami. You got to love that. And Darren Sproles, again, in PPR leagues, maybe a little backdoor cover here if he's used as a slot receiver and helps move the chains against Detroit. Other wide receivers, don't give up on Marquez Valdes-Scantling yet. The shots are still there downfield, and Denver has not been getting home on the quarterback, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him break a big play in this one. Marquise Goodwin, Deebo Samuel against the Steelers. Just bet on the Steelers secondary to have some breakdowns. James Washington on the other side of that game because of his connection with Mason Rudolph. Speaking of Dallas and Miami, Devin Smith, he could catch a long touchdown. Randall Cobb looks good. He'll get a few touches. There's always that touchdown or two upside anytime a team is playing Miami. And Nelson Aguilar, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle him vis-a-vis Darius Slay. But even last week, even though he dropped the potential game winner, he still had a very productive game. And you have to think that if it isn't going to Ertz, it's probably going to him.
And that is a wrap for part 2 of the week 3 preview here on the Audible. Everyone in the chat room, you guys have been fantastic once again today. Make sure to smash that like button, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. All these hoops that YouTube makes us jump through because they love to promote corporate shows and they don't promote independent creators as much. But when you guys do that, that really helps the channel because it puts it in other people's recommended that maybe haven't seen this show and are like, well, what's this? Couple goofy looking guys in bucket hats. Let me watch. Maybe they like it, but we appreciate you guys for liking. You like us. You really, really like us. So thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you for checking out footballguys.com and following us on Twitter. The show is at the Audible. He's at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying, go forth, dominate, kick ass on the wild side, be good. And as always, well, you better stay frosty.